And in Monument Beach, we had many wonderful adventures. It's quite the place to be because it's on the water. It's also it can be high in some places. And it shows a lot of, there's a lot of things that can happen on the water. One of the things that happened was, being a war baby, my father was on an oil tanker plying the waters during World War II. And this was very exciting for us, too. But my mother was in charge of us. She had to be, because my father would be gone for many months, and she knew exactly how to handle 3 kids by herself. She was a teacher, which eventually I became a teacher. One of the most exciting things that happened was in 1954. We lived just very close to Back River Bridge. We lived actually 3 houses down from the bridge, south on Shore Road. And the Robert Moody's turkey farm was to the north, where the lobster restaurant is located. And a little bit beyond that. And so you had hundreds of bobbing, wonderful turkeys making a lot of racket, white, and just wonderful. We had a great experience in the whole area. We used to hang our hang lines off of the bridge, Back River Bridge. One side of the bridge was basically all, you could see marshland, and on the other side was a fast current underneath the railroad bridge as well as the car bridge. Well, my mother was always interested in hurricanes. Even though she was a teacher, she enjoyed working with latitude and longitude, and we were taught that as a young age because my father was always on the water. And she had posted a map on the wall, and on the wall she would make sure that we knew exactly what was going on out in the water. August of 1954, we had quite a very unusual storm. Not only unusual, but treacherous. She had noticed, as the hurricane grew, she noticed that she would make a mark on the map as to where it was located. And it was dead center for Cape Cod. She knew it was coming to us. So she prepared as well as she could. Remember, keep in mind, my mother was alone. My father was on the ocean, already festering in the water. Anyway, we had my brother David was at the time was 5, and my brother Skip was 7. And my mother said, I want you to put on the life preservers of your brothers and tie them in securely. And I want you to put yours on. Well, these are big orange, old, cork-filled life preservers. And we looked like probably like 2 Orioles or 3 Orioles because it was so colorful. But anyway, my mom would always take us to the beach. She insisted that we have life preservers even at the beach, even though other children didn't have them on. So I tied them on. My mother said, get some food. I said, okay, we'll get some food. Why? Well, we're going on an adventure, Mom said to all of us. She said, I want you to wear your life preservers and I want you to be safe. And that's where we're going for our adventure to the beach. So the boys thought, oh yeah, they can bring their pails of water and everything else and enjoy digging in the sand. But it wasn't going to be that way, and it did not end that way. My brothers were in charge of looking down at the bridge. And slowly you could see a large puddle in front of Roy Silva's house and in front of Olive Oliveira's house. And it was moving closer and closer to our house. My mother said, I want you to get into the car. This was a 1952 Chevy black sedan. And I want you to sit in the back, and Dawn, you're going to sit in the front. Dawn Neal, of course, was what my name was at the time, D-A-W-N. So we got in the car, and the boys looked out the back, and they saw the bridge. And the bridge was flooded. You couldn't go over the bridge if you wanted to. And I was in the front seat with my mom. We had no seat belts at the time. There was no such thing. So Mother said, we're going down to Monument Beach, to the beach in Monument Beach. So sure enough, we got it, after we got in the car, we passed the people's houses. At the time, there were no numbers on houses in the streets. We passed, for example, Dr. Turner's house, Ramona Rourke's house, the Lewis house, the Maxey house, the Peralt house. And we made the bend around Shore Road and then down the hill, if I recall. And we passed the Weeks house on the left and Dr. Warren's house on the left as well. We passed Gooch's. Gooch's was the best place to get comic books, 10 cents. That's all it cost us at the time. And that was part of our allowance, quarter a week. And on the other side, where Cumberland Farms is now, was a huge spruce tree. And the spruce tree was used at Christmas time, after lighting. We would actually all of our neighbors would grab hands and we would sing Christmas carols around the tree. And then to the right was the railroad station. On the way to the railroad station, however, there were wires and they were sparking. And I could see them yellow, orange, whatever color that shocked me. And I said, Mom, we can't go any further. There's too many wires in the street. She said, oh, no. She said, we've got tires. We've got 4 rubber tires. We're insulated from those wires. And I wasn't sure about exactly what she meant, but the boys in the back were always looking behind us to see if the water was rising. Well, we got to the railroad station. There were a few cars parked there, but not many. Why were we at the railroad station? Because we had a civil defense person who told us, in case of a hurricane, go to the railroad station. And why, I had no idea. But he knew, maybe it was because it was one of the highest points in Monument Beach. As you looked out over the park, Chester Park that is, you could see the things that we used to play on. There was the slide, the metal slide was half down, it was on an angle. The merry-go-round in the front was submerged, and all you could see of the swings were chains hanging down. The tennis court, where I just learned how to play by my mom the year before, was completely filled with water. And some of the old houses, those beautiful big houses, some of them the water was up to their first floor. The waves were about 4 feet high, I think, because remember, this is 1954. And they would smack up against the land where the railroad tracks were located. Even though it was deep in front of the railroad tracks, the water kept coming up, roaring up, and the wind was getting higher and higher. But we were not afraid. For some reason, we stood there and watched it move. That was scary. The sprays that came toward us, sometimes we'd get in the car, sometimes we didn't. Why didn't we continue down the road past Monument Beach Beach? Because Monument Beach Beach was completely flooded. Behind us, Beach Street had a tree down, but not only that, we were cut off from County Road. And today, where Beach Street continues on to Clay Pond, there was no such thing as Clay Pond Road. Let's see. So after 3 hours, we noticed that it was subsiding. And my mother said, I think we're going to go back. And that was a decision that my mom made. But then I noticed something about my mom. Strange. She didn't have a life preserver. She knew that the kids needed it, but she couldn't get one. So what she did is, as a child, she learned how to swim very well, and she was a lifeguard. But I was really concerned about her. So we went back in the car. We passed all those houses on the way back. The puddle was there, and it had gone north of our house. And we ended up in front of Peralt's, and we had to walk the rest of the way because the puddle wasn't just a puddle, it was over 2 feet. But we did survive. The house survived. The land survived. Of course, there was a lot of salt, and when salt gets into the soil, it's very hard for things to grow. And I noticed that later, when we had our garden, that it was very difficult to get any kind of vegetables and things like that. But anyway, so we did survive. And just one more thing I wanted to mention to you. I told you about the turkeys, right? Yeah. The bridge was pulled up by the Corps of Engineers. You had to do that in a hurricane because the water had to go freely underneath the canal with its tremendous current and its tides. They knew that. They were very good. They knew that very well. And then all of a sudden, they looked out of their window and they see these white things, these white round things, hundreds of them. Why hundreds? So someone went down to the canal and grabbed one with a hook, grabbed it, pulled it in, and what was it? A white turkey. Moody's turkey farm had been decimated. Somehow the turkeys floated out to Finney's Harbor and down, out Back River and down to Finney's Harbor and down the canal. And that's basically the story of the hurricane.